So let me ask you a few questions that is related to your firm, and you have to answer me in a very layman's way, because
Absolutely.
I know you're from the finance background and you are going to be great with your numbers. But as a layman, I would love to understand that what does QAPITA do?
So that's a great question, and as Capita, we would want all forms of equity, what we do, to be very well understood by lay people, by investors, and by employees as well. So what Capita does is we help startups unlock the power of their ownership. So to explain it in a bit more detail, what we feel is for a startup, the most valuable asset any startup has is its own ownership. Uh, Startups can part with their ownerships with investors to raise capital. It's a very critical aspect to help scale, grow the startup. Or startup founders part with the ownership of their companies to attract and retain talent, where they give employees ESOPs, stock options, and build their team to grow the business. Both are very critical aspects of scaling a startup. Now, what we at Capita, a lot of us, what we felt was that this aspect of really helping investors understand what stake they hold in a company and how that ownership stake changes as the company evolves, as the company scales, as it raises more capital, raises more funding. What happens to that equity? How does it get more valuable? What is the dilution which happens? And the same thing from an employee's perspective as well. I join as an employee in an early stage startup, and I am given stock options and ESOPs. Now, to help me understand that the wealth creation potential of what I hold as my stake in the startup, that is the core of what we really want to do as Capita. So we've created a platform, a digital platform, to help companies manage all aspects of this ownership, both in terms of communicating this to either my investors or employees, or in terms of actually managing the compliances surrounding it. So that's the first part of what we wanted to do, to help startups, sort of understand the power of their ownership. And the next step of what we are trying to do is to help them unlock it. So can the people holding ownership actually unlock the power of their ownership by monetizing a portion of it with the company's consent? So but that's what we set out to do. That was our mission at Capita. And yes, I'm hoping that the more startups grow in this country and the more people have access to the ownership and the stake in these startups, that really helps the nation itself. And anything we can do from our side to make this process more seamless and more transparent will really help in the growth of startups. So I hope that's something which answers your question.
Absolutely explains it very well. I want to know that what was the rationale behind building Capita and why with startups?
So I'll talk from my perspective as well as the founders of my company. So as you said, I have been in the finance field. I have been in investment banking. I've been advising startups in terms of fundraise. And for a brief period, I worked as a CFO in a startup as well. And the one thing which I was able to see across my career is that this aspect of ownership, either ownership with investors in terms of what stake investors get, what rights they get, and how it evolves, or ownership with employees, which is the whole ESOPs component. It's been something which has not been very well understood. It's not been something which has been very well leveraged by startups. So as an investment banker, I've been part of several implementation of ESOPs itself. And I can see how companies struggled to implement ESOPs. So the founders are all very excited in terms of giving ownership to their employees, making their employees part owners in the company, but translating that intent into reality. Like, okay, now I want to give ESOPs to my employees. What do I really need to do? What are the legal steps to be taken? How do I make this legally compliant? And how do I communicate this to my employee as well? I saw a huge gaps in the actual translation of that intent into reality. And similar from investors' perspective. So I am an angel investor in a startup. How do I keep track of what ownership I have? My startup is now scaling, it's becoming a unicorn. And I have no idea as to what I invested, how much I'm holding, what are those holdings worth, and I don't have any manner to monetize those holdings as well. So I've seen that problem, sort of evolve over time. And as a CFO, I was in charge of ESOP implementation in my organization. I could see how difficult it was. There are very few people who are actually helping out in this specific aspect. And that's when I the founders of QAPITA. So they also had come from a similar background. They had been on the investment banking side, on the corporate VC investing side. So they also lived this problem in different aspects throughout their career. And when I saw the problem which we're setting to solve, given that I've gone through that problem before, I felt that yes, more people, there will be more founders, there will be more CFOs, CHROs who are going through this problem. And that's an opportunity for us at QAPITA to build something valuable for them, both in terms of helping them understand the nuances of setting up an ESOP program, communicating it to employees, etc. And the bigger problem in terms of helping employees unlock the value of what they hold. Because for a lot of employees, ESOPs were more like paper wealth. No one really understood it. The people who understood it also didn't probably take it very seriously, because they had to wait for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years before they could see any money coming to them in the form of what they hold as ESOPs. So can we give them an avenue to monetize what they're holding in the company? Can we give a similar avenue to angel investors as well? So they don't need to wait for the company to do like a listing or a very large round of funding for getting their exit. They can seek a partial exit, at some point of time during the life cycle of the company. So that's the reason why we sort of started QAPITA. I've been with them. I was the first employee on the business side. I've seen the company scale from like 15 employees to 275 today. And in some level, it's been a validation of my thesis that yes, the services which we're offering has been sort of valued by our customers, and that's why we sort of been growing. So.
Okay, that's nice. No, really, it's really good to hear that you're there backing their complete rights to the startups. Now, here I want to ask that how is QAPITA, or how are you all using the technology to democratize the equity?
So right from the beginning, we were clear that we were a technology company. Although most of my founders as well as myself, we did not have a background in technology, other than my CTO, who has been doing it for 20 years. But we felt that using technology to solve the problem which we're setting out to solve is the only scalable way of building the business. So which is why from day one, we built a technology, like a SaaS platform, software as a service platform, a digital platform to solve this problem of helping people understand their ownership in the company. So it's a digital platform. It can be sort of deployed online for companies to use, for investors to use, for employees to use. It's fairly simple, easy to sort of set up, and it's easy for companies to scale. So that was a very critical aspect as well, because when I start off as an early stage company, I have a limited set of investors. I am hopefully successful in terms of scaling my business. I'm raising my Series A, Series B, Series C rounds of funding. I'm adding more investors. And as I do this, I'm scaling my team as well. I'm growing from a team size of 50, 100, 150, 200 and beyond. And it became critical for us also to ensure that these companies are able to get the value out of what our platform is offering in a very seamless fashion, without creating bottlenecks from our side in terms of service delivery. So it's an online platform. It scales. We have early stage customers, any customers with maybe like 5 shareholders, 5 employees on the platform. We have fairly large unicorns with almost like 4,000, 5,000 stakeholders, employees using the platform itself, and listed companies as well. The large companies like Infosys, Axis, ICICI, etc., with 25,000 stakeholders using the platform. So the fact that we were digital and we built it in a scalable fashion using our technology helped us scale and helped our customers scale as well, without imposing, while keeping it very, very seamless and easy for them, and without imposing a lot of stress for us as a company. And the other aspect of technology also in terms of leveraging the newer tools like AI to make this process a lot simpler, a lot easier for companies to build up their cap table on our platform, or to have a very simple interface for employees to understand the value of their ESOP holdings. Those are a few areas where we have been investing in the recent, I would say, maybe in the last 12 months or so. And it's critical for us because we see that this is an avenue which can explode. The number of startups in the country are increasing. Startups are a powerful force for employment. So they will be hiring more and more people. And given the nature of who they are as startups, they would ideally want to give equity to a lot of their employees, make a lot of them employee owners and not just employees itself. And the amount of capital flowing into these startups also has been increasing leaps and bounds over the years. So every aspect of what we do, we are sort of set up to see this explosive growth happen. And our focus is to ensure that there should be no bottlenecks to that growth. So that's how we are using technology.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So since you've mentioned ESOPs, throw some light on how have ESOPs evolved over time and how it's becoming so important.
So the concept of ESOPs and employee ownership, I would say, people who have been looking at this over maybe the last 20 years or so, and we have people who have spent more than 2 decades in the industry itself. So the first wave of wealth creation when it came to ESOPs, and when most of us probably heard of the term ESOPs, was when the large IT majors went public in early 2000. So when Infosys, Wipro, etc. got listed, so they scaled as companies during the 90s and they got listed in the early 2000s. And that is when we could see the IT sector really sort of take off in India. And that is when we could really see the potential for wealth creation in ESOPs itself. So one of the things which I remember from those days in the newspapers, I don't know if it's true, but likely it is, there was this article about Narayana Murthy's driver, who actually was given ESOPs in Infosys. And when Infosys went public, he made so much money, he was able to buy his own car. So he will take his car to Narayana Murthy's place, park it, and then drive Narayana Murthy to the Infosys office. So that is when a lot of us, that is probably at a time when I was getting into college, etc. So that is when I was able to really see, and a lot of people in the nation are able to see, there is this thing called ESOPs, and it can be a way in which employees can really participate in the growth and wealth creation at some of these, sort of companies. And it's a great way for companies to also attract, retain talent and build a core team and keep the team motivated as they sort of scale. After that, after all of this happened, the next big wave of excitement surrounding employee ownership was with the growth of our homegrown startups, with Flipkart, with Snapdeal, etc. The early employees there, over the course of maybe 2008 to 2013, 14, they saw the rise in their own, sort of holdings and their own equity in these companies. And when Flipkart raised funding from SoftBank, and when ultimately the acquisition by Walmart happened, a lot of them had an exit. And that is when a lot of them had the capital to go out and start their own businesses. So a lot of split off businesses came out from Flipkart. The founders were employees, were senior employees maybe at these sort of startups. Now they had the capital to start up on their own. So they came out, they started companies of their own. They had all made wealth in the form of ESOP. So they were very excited about giving ownership to their employees as well. And anyone who has been working in this ecosystem also understood the power of equity and the power of ESOPs. They were more than happy to negotiate for more equity, more ESOPs in their compensation as compared to cash. And that's when the whole ecosystem started growing, started developing. And which is why today you see in Bangalore, you have a lot of employees who have seen that ESOPs, the cycle of wealth creation in ESOPs, and are very excited to understand the power of equity itself. And slowly in the other startup hubs across, let's say, Gurgaon or even Hyderabad and Chennai, we are seeing some portion of this growth sort of happen. So today, after the funding boom of, I would say, 2020, 2021, post-pandemic, we saw a lot of interest in ESOPs, a lot of founders wanting to institute ESOP programs and give equity to their employees. There has been a little bit of a funding winter where there's a bit of a pause taken on funding. But despite that, the interest in ESOPs continues to be as high as before. Both from founders, both from startup, companies and management teams who are looking at this as a critical way to ensure that employees are aligned, employees take long-term decisions, and employees get the benefit of the wealth creation, which they're sort of doing in these startups over a period of time. And in terms of employees as well, who feel that the best way to sort of create wealth was not through cash, but was to take an equity risk in these companies. So I take a risk in the company I'm working in. I work hard to make sure it becomes a success. I create wealth for my founders and for my investors. And thanks to ESOPs, I create wealth for myself as an employer as well. So that's how we have seen the landscape of equity compensation of ESOPs evolve, I would say maybe over the last 2 decades or so, but still going very strong. It's getting deeper and deeper in terms of the stage at which companies are actually offering ESOPs and the type of companies as well. So not necessarily companies which are only startups, raising capital, etc. We see a lot of bootstrap companies. We see a lot of family businesses nowadays setting up a new business and actually giving ESOPs in that business itself. And we expect to see that trend to continue as well.
Okay, that's great. It's good to hear that this ESOPs is so important. But if you interact with a lot of startups, right? They might be at all different stages. When do you think that they should start implementing ESOPs in their system? Or when they should give away the ESOPs?
So in our experience, given that we are involved right from helping them set up their ESOP schemes itself, there are 2 triggers for a startup to start thinking of ESOPs, to start giving out ESOPs itself. The first is when the company is scaling beyond the founding team, beyond the first 2-3 founders and the early employees. So as a startup founder, now my business has got product market fit. My product is being accepted by the market. Now I want to hire some good talent. So I want to hire a head of sales who can take my product and start selling it in a more calibrated, organized fashion. I may want a head of delivery or a CTO to really ensure that my tech delivery is happening in the right fashion and the tech infrastructure is working properly. So the moment I come to the point where I need to hire, I would say mid to senior level people as I'm scaling my startup, that is when I realized that, okay, I'm a startup. I want top quality talent. So I'm running a technology startup. I want people from Microsoft and Google to join me. But I don't have the financial capability to match and exceed their salary. They're all being paid something fairly high in terms of cash in these companies. And I can make up the difference using ESOPs and using my own ownership as a leverage. I basically go to them and say, I can't match your salary entirely. I can only pay you so much. And maybe you are taking a bit of a sacrifice to come and join me as a startup. Of course, we are doing something really exciting here. And the profile of the work itself is going to be exciting for you. But just to make it interesting for you economically as well, I'm going to give you ESOPs, which is going to be a certain equity percentage in my startup. Now, for whatever you hold today as ESOPs, I'm still a very early stage startup. I've only raised my seed round of funding. By the time I get to like a Series B round of funding, you can expect the equity to grow 10x. That growth, that level of growth is not unheard of when it comes to startups. So the startup is doing well, if it is scaling well, for a startup to grow 10x, return 10x value to investors is well within the realms of possibility, which means the investor, the employees also have the ability to sort of be part of the 10x growth. But if I am working in a very large tech company, I don't have the ability to grow that fast. I may still have options even in a Microsoft or a Google, but even that is not going to grow as fast. And it's very unheard of for a person to grow 10x in terms of salary over like 2 to 3 years or so. So even from an employee's perspective, it starts to make more sense. And employees who feel the ability that they can take this risk, that they can actually take a little bit of a sacrifice today for a big upside, which may happen in the next 3-4 years or so, as the startup is sort of scaling, it starts to, it starts to appeal to them, or appeal to a certain section of employees who can really do it, right? So that's how ESOPs basically work. That's a value proposition. That's a pitch both to a startup founder as well as startup employees.
Okay, that's great. I myself is running a company and a firm, and I get confused about ESOPs. When should I bring in this ESOP concept? So is there any financial or a thumb rule where here beyond this you have to bring in ESOPs, or it is again we have to keep consulting QAPITA?
No. So like I said, one trigger could be just you want to hire talent and you cannot give cash and you have to leverage your ESOPs. The other trigger for a lot of people is when they raise their first institutional round of funding. So as I scale, I may raise funding from my friends, families, etc. That's going to be on very simple terms, nothing attached to it. But when I'm raising funding from either a VC investor or even a private equity investor, or nowadays even a formal angel group, a bunch of people who are coming together and investing as a bunch of angels, you will see that they actually have a condition in their investment agreement to say that the company will set up an employee equity sort of pool, an ESOP pool, and implement it before our funding comes into the company. So the reason why they do it is one, for them, they know that it's impossible to create a world-class startup which can scale, which can, let's say, sort of expand without the employees actually having some stake in the startup and some ownership in the startup, some skin in the game, basically. So that's why you see it's very common practice for these investors to insist on it. The other reason why they do it is to say that I don't want my stake to get diluted if you're taking a decision to set up employee equity or ESOPs at a later point of time. So I know that this is important for you to build a business and I don't want to get diluted. Please ensure that you are doing this right now. And then my investments can sort of come into the company. So even people who have not completely subscribed to the value from an ESOPs perspective, find that they are mandatorily required to create ESOPs when they're raising their first round of funding. So that's the other aspect of it. If not for my own decision to give equity to employees, I may have a condition which may require me to actually do it when I'm raising funding. But other than that, there is no legal or a regulatory, sort of a trigger for granting ESOPs. There's no minimum required condition or threshold or anything like that. Even a small startup, two founders getting together, investing 10 lakhs into a business can start giving ESOPs to their employees. But it makes more sense for companies where the founder is clear that, yes, I am going to scale this company. I am going to see the value of my equity grow in a very rapid fashion. That is when ESOPs really make sense. That is when value actually can go to employees and they can get excited as well. And more importantly, I have a certain exit plan for this business and for my investors and potentially my employees as well. Meaning I will probably do an IPO in the next maybe 7 to 8 years or so. Or we are building something valuable. I'm sure that there will be a strategic acquirer who will come and pick up stake or pick up my company itself. Or my company is going to generate so much cash that I can use the cash and buy back whatever is being held by my employees or my investors. That aspect is also very critical because employees are not going to be motivated to just see growth if there is no end game, if there's no exit option. Because ultimately, this paper wealth creation has to translate into actual cash for an employee or for an investor. So I would say these are not legal preconditions, but these are preconditions to ensure that employees take your ESOP seriously. just to ensure that there is a good growth potential which you're seeing in the equity of the company, and there's exit option as well. So someone comes to me and says, I'm running a bootstrap business, and it's more like a lifestyle business for me. I don't want any pressures in terms of growth. I may decide to grow, not decide to grow. And over the next 5 years, I may grow only 5%, 10% per year. Then ESOPs may not be a very attractive tool for that person. It's like this person clearly wants control over how fast they grow. And which means that employees are not going to see a great growth path from their own value, and they may not get a great exit option as well. So even if this company does try to implement ESOPs, it may not really achieve the desired objective in terms of motivating their employees to join. So I would say that is a condition to ensure that there is sufficient value creation, wealth creation possible, and there is an exit opportunity possible. Which is why today, if you see a lot of companies which have investors, which have external investors, they become prime candidates for giving equity to employees, because employees take comfort to say that there's an investor who's there. Now, this investor definitely wants a 5x return, a 10x return. This investor will ensure that an IPO happens of the company, or some sort of an exit happens in a period of time. When that exit is happening, as employees, we can exit as well. So we can take comfort in that. So if I see like marquee investors, like a Matrix or an Elevation or a Peak 15 on the cap table, as an employee, I get more confidence that yes, my equity actually is going to be worth more, and I should be happy to get ESOPs in this company. So that's how it works.
That's great. Getting a lot of reality over startups and ESOPs. I would like to end the interview by asking you, how is QAPITA driving value to their customer?
So we do a few things. We started off with a set of services, and then we expanded over the year. So for us, the way we would want customers to look at us is we are end-to-end solution providers for any requirement you may have when it comes to ESOPs or ownership itself. So in most cases, if I look at it from a startup's evolution, an early stage startup, founders come to us to say, I want to implement an ESOP scheme. I don't know how to do it. So for us, typically the first touch point starts from advisory. We have a service where we help them understand how to give equity to employees, decide, okay, I'm hiring a senior employee. What quantum of ESOP should I give to this person? How do I structure it? We walk them through the entire legal process of doing it, and we enable the company to legally start giving out ESOPs itself. So the first touch point for us is an advisory, sort of engagement. After that, we have a digital platform where these ESOPs and even my cap table, my ownership with investors can be tracked on an online platform. And these ESOPs can be granted digitally. It becomes an e-grant. It can be tracked, both from the employee side as well as from the company side. And the required compliances also can sort of happen. So once they have the scheme set up, they launch the program through our digital platform. And on an ongoing basis, apart from compliances, as the startup scales, support in terms of accounting, what is the accounting impact of giving ESOPs? We are able to help them model that on our platform. Any compliances is required, secretarial or otherwise, the platform provides assistance in terms of doing that. And as they sort of scale, become larger, they may become listed as well, or they may go in for an IPO. We are the only company to support across the life cycle, right from early stage to listing and post-listing as well. And for companies which are not yet listed, which are maybe Series C plus in terms of funding, they may conduct liquidity programs as well. And we help in managing those liquidity programs, automating them, and if required, finding investors for this so that employees get liquidity and the company doesn't need to put up the cash for it. So these are the set of services. This is how we support startups across their ESOPs and equity journey, right from early stage to listing and post-listing as well. And there are a few other like products more targeted at private equity or VC funds. But from a startup perspective, this is the set of services to do.
Okay, that's lovely, Vikram, knowing that how QAPITA is doing great for these startups. And I myself being into a startup company, I definitely say I look forward for such kind of hand holding and such kind of where we can look on other problems rather than these financial problems, because this is all this needs a great thinking over what has to be done. So you guys are doing great, quite impressive, and looking forward that you have contributed to Startup Mahakumbh. So being a sponsor there, so looking forward there where you can interact with more startups, guide them more, and help and give them a helping hand where they can absolutely concentrate and bring in more innovations to their startup and not get themselves cobwebbed in these finances, these ESOPs. And I myself is not a completely number girl, so getting numbers done by somebody it's a great relaxation. So thank you, Vikram.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thanks a lot. Pleasure to contribute. Pleasure to be part of the event, and hope to see a very successful event as well.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much,